Remember how fun the Big 12 was like 10 years ago with all those great quarterbacks? Let's do that again.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports Network, joined by a very special guest from the Rogue Media Sports Network as well, Pete Sousa from Inside the 12 and the Pete Sousa Show. We're going to talk about quarterbacks in this conference. It's as deep as it's ever been in the Big 12. This quarterback position, the most important position on the field. I almost said most expensive, which is also true. We're going to go over the top guys. We're going to go over the dark horse guys who could elevate their teams into possible contenders. And then what coach has the most to prove going into this 2025 football season? It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Pete, do you agree that quarterback is an important position?
Well, I know it is. And it's most important.
That's
probably the most important position in sports.
Probably.
I think so, because pitchers can't pitch every game. So
yeah, second baseman though. Think about it. We'll think about it. But this is as good as it's been in about a decade for quarterbacks in this conference. And Pete, you know what's funny is I think we talked about this last year when we talked to Quan Finn, and then you brought it up to me off the air. You were like, we should really go over like all the quarterbacks in this conference. It's really sneaky, pretty good.
Yes.
This year, not as sneaky, but still, sans Shedeur Sanders, he sped right out of here at 100 miles an hour. Still pretty good. How deep?
I'm getting Kevin Borba on the line, dude.
How deep is the quarterback play in this conference?
I mean, it's ridiculously deep. I think when you start to put together a list of your, if you want to say like rankings, Jalen Daniels is like towards the bottom. And that's a guy who coming into last year, people were super excited about and almost like had near the top. Mm-hmm. Now, that's to no fault of his own. But you get like, Caden Salter, Devin Dampier, another transfer, O'Connor Wegman, like all these new talented quarterbacks and big arms into the conference. It really does change how we rank these quarterbacks now. It's not like you're returning and you get the same ranking of where you were last year, but also too, like there's different kinds of quarterbacks, which is a lot of fun. You have the gunslinger, my man, your man, Sawyer Robertson, who I think I think is the best. I mean, he is at the top of my heap of, and there's a lot of depth, right? So yes, to answer your question, it is very deep, and I think that is going to be a lot of fun for the Big 12, and for me doing what I do, hosting Inside the 12 and calling games. Like, I think that could be a real selling point for the Big 12 this year. If you remember last year, the Big 12 was kind of like towards the end of the season, it was like, whoa, we have the craziest, closest games. Or, it's like, that's not cutting it for like the college football playoff and for college football hype overall. Division III schools have great, crazy games.
Sure.
But do you have a host of the best quarterbacks in the country? You do this year. So that's not only a reason to watch, but a reason to pay attention all season long to several different teams.
Yeah, and to that end, it brings you to a place where you can turn on the TV at any point on a Saturday and flip to a Big 12 game and kind of instantly be entertained almost. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And any game you're passively watching for a quarter in the Big 12, you're like, this kid's slinging the ball out. Whether it's Sawyer Robertson or Sam Levitt, those guys at the top, or even a Baron Morton or a Josh Hoover, and you're like, man, there's some good quarterback play in this conference. That feels like that does elevate the entire product that you're putting out there in 2025.
We still talk about the 83 draft like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And really, like that is such a hallmark of when you talk about pro football and personnel and drafts, right? And it was because the position of quarterback was head and shoulders, obviously, in that draft above any other, and head and shoulders above any other draft. Back in that draft, head and shoulders above any other position, and now still remains at the top. The 99 draft Actually, 99 was bad because that was exciting going in.
Is that Tim Couch?
I screwed up. Yeah, it was
99?
Achilles Smith and Tim Couch.
Yeah,
that was rough.
Yeah, it was exciting at the time. It just didn't pan out.
Going into the season, going into the draft, it was super exciting. It was all quarterbacks.
Pete, we got to save your rep here because there are some people who have watched you twice on this show, just twice, and have heard that take and was here for the DeQuan Finn take.
All right, step off on the decline. First of all, I've been on more than twice.
I know. I'm saying there's some.
Slow down. I have been stopped on the street by people that have said, I love how you hung in there with Dave Aranda, how you always believed. You said it on Cam's show. I actually mentioned that Baylor, I thought they could win 4 of their last 5 games. They did. They won them all.
You did. Even at 2 and 4, you were talking it up. I'll give you that. And to be fair, if you'd let me finish, we all thought that way about DeQuan Finn. Okay, Pete, we did.
I was super excited about DeQuan.
So was I, man. I was really hyping him up. And that is kind of the warning that I have sent to Utah fans to pivot real quick about Devin Dampier. Yeah. Because, and look, when you look at them side by side, both coming in as mid-major guys, DeQuan Finn was better. DeQuan Finn had a better resume than Devin Dampier. The writing came on the wall pretty quickly with kind of his mechanics and stuff, and it's just like, that might not work against Big 12 defenses. But Devin Dampier was not as good at the last stop as DeQuan Finn was at his last stop, and yet some people in Vegas love Utah to win this conference this year. I don't.
One thing. Here's a scary stat that I fell victim to last year. Devin Dampier, right? He obviously played some big time competition playing for New Mexico. I think Arizona, Auburn, and there was another team. Washington State, right? So he compiled like 725 total passing yards and 5 touchdowns against those 3 opponents. They said the same thing last year. For DeQuan Finn, right?
Yep.
Oh my God,
Notre Dame.
Yeah, so be cautious of those stats. I read one today about Dampier that was, kind of saying, oh, he's a big time player. It's every week, guys. This is the Big 12.
Yeah, you got to take it with a grain of salt, especially this time of year. But Pete, before we get to kind of the unsung heroes of this, I just want real quick your top 3 quarterbacks in this conference, which is as deep at that position as it's been in a decade.
I have Sawyer Robertson, number 1.
All right, you can come back on the show.
Sawyer Robertson is a 4-star quarterback from West Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Right there, you got me. And then, of course, we had some issues, whether it was obviously, he started off transferring from Mississippi State after the Mike Leach tragedy, ends up at Baylor, gets an opportunity, gets hurt, was totally misjudged by people like me, who remember the Achilles Smith, Tim Couch draft as a good one. And I think people, everybody, the book was out on Sawyer. We were finished. A lot of us were with him. And he reminded us as to why he got that 4-star ranking. And the special thing about Sawyer Robertson, outside of all the things he does so well and his big body, right, and his smarts, is that he is truly a leader. And I'm not saying if he goes out this year, you throw a pick or 2, as long as you don't do it every game, okay. But you see what I'm saying? If he plays poorly, he plays poorly. But there are a lot of intangibles wrapped up in this guy. That one, to be specific, he is a leader. Guys follow this dude. And that has a lot to do with success at the next level and success at this level, especially when you look at how well he did last year. He did very well. Highest QBR in the conference in some of the biggest games any quarterback had to play in. I think Sam Levitt's the only guy who I would say, played better in bigger games.
Sure.
And that's because he had the opportunities, because he was in much bigger games. But Sawyer's my number 1. My number 2 is Avery Johnson. And my number 3 is Sam Levitt.
Wow. Give me Avery over Sam Levitt. Give me the explanation here.
Oh, the explanation is he's totally dynamic and he's nowhere near his ceiling.
I would hope so. Yeah.
I'm
just saying I would hope so. I think he's a better player than what he showed last year. Avery Johnson.
He wasn't bad last year. I think that's a major misconception. They had issues with their offensive coordinator. their offensive line. He was a brand new quarterback to that system, right? I think he was a redshirt freshman.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
And I know their OC was now down on the field. No, he was up in the booth, and he was usually coaching the offensive line on the field. And like that played into their offense being kind of screwy, especially late in the season. There was stuff going on with their coach, with Chris Kleiman, like off the field. Like there was a lot happening. And I think that this year things are set up for Avery Johnson to have a huge year because he showed – I'm not talking about flashes. The guy showed like infernos last year. I mean, watching him roll out and be able to pick apart a defense and decide on those RPOs, I'm going to run, I'm going to throw, that gave a lot of good defenses a real tough time. I think he's the most explosive quarterback in the conference. Like run, pass, what's he going to do? Okay. And he's with the big thing here. Kansas State is a winning program. Last year was a bit of a hiccup, but that's a team that's usually pretty good. That's a coach that's usually really good. Yep. So that's one of the reasons I have him at number 2, and because I like to surprise people a little bit.
And that is a surprise. That is a surprise. Speaking of surprises, Pete, let's do that next. Let's talk about the dark horse quarterbacks we haven't talked about yet that we should be and how they could elevate their teams into contention. We're going to do it next on Locked On Baylor. But first, let me ask you a question. You ever look at that bank account and think, where did all my money go? Right? Online shopping, ordering food delivery, entertainment. It's easy to lose track, okay? That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, and it gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, even plan long-term goals. Managing your money with your partner is even smoother than ever. You guys can track your own shared and personal accounts, set goals together, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDON, COLLEGE, for half off your first year. Back on Locked On Baylor, Cam Stewart alongside Pete Sousa from Inside the 12. We're talking about how deep the quarterback position is in this conference. And it's really, there'll be someone we don't talk about on the show that we probably should have already. But Pete, looking at this, you talked about it in the first segment, how it's difficult to rank these quarterbacks because there's so much quality. I would take it a step further and say it's tough to rank these teams because of the quality of quarterbacks here and obviously how nutty the Big 12 usually gets. So we've heard a lot about Sawyer Robertson, about Sam Levitt, about Avery Johnson, all three that you mentioned in the first segment, Devin Dampier as well as a newcomer to the conference. But who's the guy we haven't talked about enough yet?
Well, it's kind of an odd answer because we talked about him a great deal last year, was Rocco Becht. But he's getting left out of the conversation this year because there are so many good quarterbacks in this conference, so many high-profile quarterbacks.
Other guys rose up, right?
Yes.
Like Sam Levitt and Sawyer Robertson.
They're sexy. Up. Like Sam Levitt, I believe was –
that's true too.
And look, a guy like Sam Levitt, like I have him 3, but you got to do it. Like you got to do it for another year. Like remember, he did not come with a lot of excitement and hype or like, oh, this wait till you see this athlete play quarterback. Like so.
Sawyer Robertson, same thing. Got to do it another time.
Yes, exactly. You have to do it a second year in a row. But see, that's where I say Sawyer, I think, was almost more prolific than Sam Levitt. Sam Levitt
yes.
And Sam Levitt was provided opportunities to play on bigger stages and garner a little more attention, a little more praise. He's inconsistent when he's faced with a lot of pressure. Without Cam Scatteraboo this year, he'll be faced with more pressure because I can't imagine their running game will be as good. They do return a bunch of pretty good skill guys. Arizona State does. So it's not like he'll totally be without the band, but I that's one guy I expect to slip a little bit. And a guy who I don't expect to slip, which brings me back to our question, is Rocco Becht. I think we're sleeping on him right now. I think he could come out and have an amazing year. He has shown, right? He's tested. He's probably one of the most tested guys in the conference. And where a guy like Josh Hoover for me would be like if you and I are playing college football, right? Like we're playing like the video game. Let me be TCU so I can put up huge numbers with Josh Hoover.
That is real quick. I might get my degree revoked here, but I think Josh Hoover is probably the most slept on guy in this conference. He was one big pass away from 4,000 yards passing last year without a running game at all.
He's like a Timmy Chang, dude. He's like
I like Cole Brennan, man.
I think you're right. He's going to put up crazy numbers again this year. He is that guy to be his team on a video game and see if you can beat your buddy 60 to 56.
Right.
You know, but if I want to win a Big 12 title, I'm not picking him.
That's a different story. Yeah.
And
I'm not saying it really elevates TCU that much, but yeah.
Now, if I want to win a Big 12 title, I'm going with a guy like Rocco Becht, a guy who knows how to win, a guy who knows how to manage an offense and has really been through all of it, and has shown his incredible accuracy. He can run just well enough. He understands, like it's almost like he's got a radar where he can feel the pocket kind of collapsing on him. And he makes big plays on third down. I always believe, like, you know, his dad was a first-round pick, had an amazing NFL career. I think there's also something to when you have a son of a pro who's actually pretty good, I think, like, look out. Because there's all kinds of things that scare other guys, like sticker shock, that those guys aren't afraid of because they've been around it so long, whether it be the media, the big crowds, the bright lights, the attention. It's kind of second nature for those guys.
Happened in Colorado last year.
That's exactly right. I wasn't even thinking about that. Yeah, so I like Rocco as being a guy who is someone we're not talking about enough.
Do you worry about the obvious question that's come up for Rocco quite a bit in this offseason? His two leading receivers both gone, Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins.
No, I don't. I think that will have an impact, but I don't know. And honestly, I thought that they both get taken by the Bills. Is that right?
That sounds right. Yes, they both went to the same team. Yeah,
and I thought that was. I did not think that they were as. Honestly, I thought they were more a product of that team being good than vice versa. The team being good because of them.
Yeah.
We will find out this year, but I don't see that being a major situation that Becht has to manage, not having those two wide receivers.
And speaking of the newcomers, which we touched a little bit on earlier, which of these newcoming quarterbacks do you expect the most out of?
I think Connor Wegman has an opportunity at Houston. What are you laughing at?
No, I think that's a really good pick. I mean, this is a weird one in terms of the hype around him, whether it's deserved. A&M quarterbacks always look bad, but he was a big-time player out of high school.
Big time, dude.
And that could be a key for Houston. Like, we saw how good they were defensively last year. It's something that he could unlock. I think when I pose the question of, like, who can really elevate their team from, like, even a bottom-of-the-barrel team to a sleeper, like, you could have thought Noah Fafita because he's still a pretty good college quarterback. But I think Connor Wegman's actually the answer. Like, if he is what the Houston fans want him to be, they're all of a sudden a team to just worry about a little bit.
Well, and think about this last year. We mentioned about, Baylor kind of went and hit him in the mouth that game late in the season at Houston. But a lot of teams were struggling with them because of how well they played defensively. And because they had
Sawyer did not have a good game.
Well, they had some fireworks on offense, but when you look at it now, they had no quarterback play last year.
Yeah.
None. And now they have quite possibly a very strong option under center. And that's why all this stuff this year is going to be so fun, because the hype around these quarterbacks is going to have us paying attention. So how are they going to play? You've got the audience, right? We're captive. Let's see what I can't wait. And it has a chance to, if these guys get rolling, to really improve the standing of the Big 12 overall as far as the landscape of college football is concerned.
It is going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Let's go from the signal callers to the guys on the sideline in the headsets. Which coach has the most to prove in the 2025 Big 12 football season? Pete will answer that next on Locked On Baylor. All right, Pete, we shift the coaches here. I know you know all these teams inside and out from inside the 12, which is coming back in football season. Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see it again. Well, we talked all about quarterbacks, but let's look at the coaching positions because I'm going to keep this question pretty open. It doesn't have to be a guy who's on his last legs. It can be a new guy even. But what coach in the Big 12 this year has the most to prove in your eyes?
Coach Prime. There's no question about it. He has lost a treasure trove of assets. How does he respond? Does his team – now, is he going to be like one of those Florida State teams that he played on under Bobby Bowden? And after he left for Bobby Bowden in Florida State, if you remember, they don't recruit, they reload. That's what they used to say. Yeah. And Colorado is in a unique position where they are still the place to go, right? But we're going to find out, like, how badly big-time recruits and guys that can play wanted to go there this year. Because if they struggle after losing, I mean, Shedeur Sanders was amazing as far as not just –
number retired good.
Well, not just was he good, numbers-wise, and he's pretty efficient. He didn't throw a lot of picks when you compare
right, yeah.
for the second year in a row, but also he managed the game really well. And he was pretty cool head for that team. That's a huge,
especially for a guy with such an awful offensive line, like literally like having the cool head in those moments too.
Yeah. And what's going to come of, you lose Travis Hunter. And that's like such an issue on both sides of the ball. He was for opponents last year. And that becomes, in my opinion, such an issue on both sides of the ball for Colorado, because you have a guy now that if you remove him from your offense, that was somebody who, like, defensive coordinators would, like, really prepare for, right? You're losing sleep. How are we going to stop Travis Hunter? Well, that's gone, right? It changes the way you prepare for Colorado, and I think it puts more pressure on Colorado, Dion and his staff, to do a more sound job, a sharp job of getting these guys ready to play.
It's a good point. I mean, we're still, honestly, I know I'm a little bit on a different cart on this train than you are, but I think we're still trying to figure out if Dion can really coach at this level.
No, dude.
Like right now, it's 1 year at 9-3. Like, you know what I mean? 9-4 at the end of it.
It's my same thing now. We can talk about it with the NBA Finals having, in season. Tyrese Halliburton. Like, it's like, okay, he's a superstar. Let's all hold the phone. And here's what I mean. What he's doing is absolutely amazing, but you've got to be consistent with it. You've got to do it year after year, game after game. And I don't care what school you go to. If you transfer, that's fine. Just keep doing it. And if you can, or now we're talking about head coaches, but if you can't do it year after year, which is what Dion's going to have to do to prove that he really is that upper echelon coach. So far, he's come through, right? I mean, you look at his body of work, but
I wouldn't call him an elite coach. I wouldn't even say he's a top 5 coach in this conference, but you're right. Like he did turn a team that won 1 game into 2 years later winning 9 games. Like that's a big jump. We know that at Baylor. That's definitely a big jump.
And there's one outlier with him that is unfortunate, but I think it's one of the reasons I said him is his health. I feel like something weird is going on. And I think it will interfere with his ability to be as present and as locked in as he is used to being. I could be dead wrong. I have no evidence, nothing, but it seems like a situation that could quite possibly impact his ability to be the steward for this Colorado football program going forward.
It's interesting, man. And I'll give him credit so far. I didn't think he was going to stick around after the kids were gone. And I honestly wouldn't have blamed him too hard. I don't think. Anyway, from one team that's not on Baylor's schedule this year to another team that's not on Baylor's schedule this year, how do you feel about the whole Rich Rodriguez situation in West Virginia? I know it's a team that you actually do follow pretty closely in this conference. I don't know how you'd be able to sell it to me as a West Virginia fan.
Look, well, that's the only people you can sell it to.
I guess, yeah.
I think that there's they're so close to the situation that, and they are so desperate for like a feel good thing. I think that they leaned into the Rich Rod hire, right? I do not think it goes great. I just don't.
It's tough to see.
It's tough. I by the way, Ren Baker, their AD, is probably one of the best in the conference. And so that makes me believe in the move a little bit more, but I don't feel great about it. As that's sitting here with you, like prognosticating that, I would rather have like a young, slick guy. It's like let me give a good. It's like Mac Brown going back to North Carolina.
By the way, there's another one in our conference this year. UCF, Scott Frost. Just pull him back.
I think Scott Frost will do better.
I think Scott Frost had a better tenure. And I know this is way up for debate. Had a better tenure at UCF, national championship 2017, than Rich Rod had at West Virginia. They were both good. I still think Scott Frost is a good coach. And it's funny, I'm sitting here thinking of what a Baylor example would be, and it's not that crazy. If in 3 years or so, Dave Aranda gets fired and they pull Matt Rule back after an rather unsuccessful tenure
or
at
Kim
Nebraska. That's a little different. I think that's an easier one to sell. The 3 national championships here. Speaking of which, last question I want to ask you. When we talk about the coaches who have a lot to prove this year in this conference, and certainly I think Rich Rod and Scott Frost would also be high up on that list as well. Sonny Dykes maybe even. Does Dave Aranda still fall on that list?
No, because he's got the undying support of Mac Rhodes.
I guess. That's a good point.
Really?
Yeah.
So I don't think like he's like hot seat-ish or anything. Now, he could be the guy. I love Dave. I pull for him. Mm-hmm. But he could be the guy. Like I mentioned this and made this comparison last year, like Wayne Fonts. Like the Lions would always find a way to like get in the playoffs and like save his job. Like, and Baylor fans don't want that, right? Every year where it's like, we're going to fire him this year. And then they win like 4 in a row. And it's like, we're going to keep him. Like, I could see that. I could maybe like, that's a possible scenario. But no, I think he's in great shape. Unless unless you come out and it's an abomination. But remember last year they came out and it was an abomination.
Yep.
So, and they finished great.
Did I ever tell you I worked with Wayne Fonts' grandson?
You did.
I did, yeah. In Odessa.
Because I made that. I've done this before.
That checks out. It's probably on air. It's probably like recorded somewhere on YouTube. Yes. It's probably out there. Anyway, all right. So Dave Aranda not on that list. Prime definitely on that list. Kyle Whittingham on the list?
No.
I do think Sonny Dykes an interesting one though. One good year with somebody else's players. It reads a lot like Aranda before this year. But they never bottomed out, I guess, the way Baylor did. They didn't go 3-9. So
no, and look, I think if he has if he has a really bad year this year, like I could see them make a change. Sure.
Because TCU's a good job. I mean, this is the second time I pumped up their tires in this episode. I can't.
They're also they understand who they are. Now, they've had a lot of success college basketball-wise when you look at their history as a team. Yeah. Like, they never made the friggin' tournament until Jamie Dixon got there. I mean, like, it'd been 25 years.
They were horrible.
So it'd have been, like, I think Billy Tubbs was the last one to take TCU to the NCAA tournament. I could be wrong. I think he was. But even when Jamie Dixon has, like, these, like, hits these potholes, right, in his career at TCU for a season, like, there's never any talk of like him getting fired. I think TCU, as much as it was so exciting, they went to the national championship a few years ago. I think they know who they are as a school. And I think they make prudent decisions like that. So if Sonny Dykes has a bad year, they understand they're not Michigan, so they probably won't make a change.
Which is a critical thing to have in your athletic department. I think Baylor understands that really well, too. I think just the profile of Baylor's changed a lot in the athletic department the last 20 years. So anyway, Pete Sousa of Inside the 12, the Pete Sousa Show, which talks plenty of Baylor and local sports every weekday 11 a.m. Eastern time, which is 10 a.m. Central time, which is what we really care about, live on YouTube and then wherever you get your podcasts as well. And I'm sure you will hear him on some broadcasts early on in the football season here from some Big 12 schools. Pete Sousa, thanks so much for coming on. And thank you guys for making it your first listen today and every day. Let us know what you think in the comments below. What quarterbacks are going to raise their team into contention? What coaches have the most to prove? Where do you have Sawyer, Robertson, Sam Levitt? What do you think about Pete's Avery Johnson take? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe. We are well on the path towards 4,000 subscribers, and we need your help to get there before football season. And we will see you tomorrow on another episode of your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.